AICPA Town Hall, a high-impact news broadcast to help you navigate the most pressing issues facing the profession. Get timely and critical information, real-time interpretation, and analysis. Learn strategies, best practices, and capabilities to drive long-term success for your clients and organization. Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time.
Good afternoon and welcome to the AICPA Town Hall Series. I'm Eric Auskerson, one of your hosts for today. We've got a great show for you planned, plenty going on. We talk about the most pressing issues facing the profession, and we're now averaging over 9,000 live attendees, and all of your feedback and questions, they really help drive our agenda from a week-to-week standpoint. So today, we're going to kick things off with a Profession in DC update with Mark Peterson. We're then going to have a technical update with Carrie Hipsack talking about EIDL and PPP items. And then we're going to have a review on some tips for the last 30 days of tax season with Carl Peterson and Deb Ruud, a guest from CNA. And then we're also going to talk about a very important topic, cyber risk, heightened cyber risk with all that's going on in the geopolitical environment. And that's going to be done with Jim Bork. And then we'll close with our open forum. So here's the lineup of today's presenters. I look forward to welcoming them when they join. And right now, I'd like to call up Mark Peterson, who you all well know. He leads the AICPA advocacy area. So welcome, Mark.
Good to be here, Eric.
So, Mark, before we get into, there's a lot of big topics happening in DC, but let's just step back. We're coming up on 2 years for doing these AICPA town halls. And, for the first year plus, it was all about business relief and the pandemic and shutdowns and reopenings. And then, the pandemic and business relief, really drove this, digital accelerant, impacted the great, drove some of the great resignation, potentially created some of this inflation, the $7 trillion injected into the economy. And now look at this, we're 3 months into 2022, and we've got some historic geopolitical events occurring. We still have COVID. We still have all of the items here on this sheet. So, Mark, I know you think about, how our leaders in DC work, and they set agendas, and then, the external pressures, that they never expected come into play.
Absolutely. And I throw into the mix some significantly difficult tax filing seasons that we've been dealing with over the last few years, obviously impacted by COVID. So nothing's easy and nothing's in a vacuum. When you think about the policy agendas that are laid out with a new Congress and with a new administration, they did lay those out. They had a place they wanted to go. But then we were impacted by COVID. We would see the numbers rise and go back, and policies would be changed and impacted. Some of the economic pressures that you indicated, like inflation, has had a huge impact on whether or not, for example, the Build Back Better bill was going to move. And when that was rolled out at the beginning, we all thought it was highly likely, but other things started to impact the outlook for that. So if you think about, COVID, we've got what's going on geopolitically in Europe, and we're also closing in on another election. And so all those things have a massive impact on policy agendas and the ability to get things done. It's not necessarily that there is opposition to a lot of the profession's issues that we want to get done, but there has to be floor space, floor time in the House and the Senate, and then there has to be capacity to get things done. And those are massive challenges right now with these significant events going on.
So, Mark, in January, we were talking a lot about the Build Better Back, bill, and the numbers that were being presented. So, from now until the midterms, what is the likelihood? What do you think? The title of this slide is a trusted advisor role. What should these firms be, stating to their clients about what could occur before those midterm elections?
Last year we were betting that something was going to happen because that's the way it looked. It looked like the pressure was there. Some of these factors came into play that made that less likely. Having said that, they're going to continue to talk about some level of relief. Okay. So it's not going to be those kinds of numbers that we were talking about, Build Back Better, but some level of relief. Now, does it happen? I think every day it becomes slightly less likely as we get closer to the election, as people try and deal with inflation, as they're assessing where we are as far as the economy coming back. But they'll continue to talk about it. We just passed, a $1.5 trillion funding bill in order to keep the government going. And even since then, that was like March 15th. Since then, they're talking about supplementing that with more spending on COVID, except it's not necessarily economic relief, Eric. It's more about testing and vaccines, and support for the health recovery than economic recovery. But there'll still be discussions about it. And, depending on if there's another spike, what happens to small businesses, what happens to restaurants, that discussion will continue. It's getting harder for me to handicap as we move forward.
Well, Mark, we're going to talk more about some of these major external, activities on our March 31st town hall with Barry Melanson and potentially some economic experts, just to kind of really try to further understand what all this means as we look out towards the end of 2022. But with that, there's something happening in DC today.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in DC today, but why don't you cover what's going on with Commissioner Rettig?
Well, we've been talking about IRS service a lot. We've been talking about it for years, as a matter of fact. So it wasn't just when filing season started this year. And as everybody knows that participates in these town halls, the service is not adequate. We should be in this together with the IRS. We should all be trying to work together to figure out how to come up with solutions. There are long-term solutions, sure, funding, technology, training for some of the talent there. That's all fair, and we want to have that debate, and we want to be supportive of that. But then there's also now. There's the right now, and shutting down notices. We've pushed to have notices shut down because what that does is create correspondence with the IRS when we know they have a historic backlog. We have this K2, K3 problem, right? That was, between the lack of e-filing, the guidance that came out, and then, the confusion around some of the transition guidance that they gave just recently. We continue to push on that. And I'll talk to you in a second about this bicameral letter that's out, but those are things we're not going to give up on. We're going to continue to push, April 18th getting closer and closer. We're going to play through. We're going to continue to push for as much relief as we can get. But we're also not going to let this go after the 18th. We've got to figure this out for next season as well. And so we're going to continue to push. We're going to work with policymakers to try and get the things that we need related to service fixed.
Well, Mark, that's great saying you're playing through, and the town hall community kind of played through a lot, helping get this tremendous response to this letter.
They did. And I mean, I cannot think over the last couple of years, particularly in the hyper-partisan atmosphere that we have, where we have seen as many bipartisan, bicameral letters with the numbers of members of Congress that have signed on to them. I mean, the coalition of tax preparers that we've been working with, the engagement of the state societies, CPA societies, has been incredible. The town hall community engaging has been incredible, and it's made a difference. Listen, Commissioner Rettig would not have been testifying today had it not been for all those efforts. Usually there's one hearing, and it's right after tax season to talk about how tax season went. And he's been up there 4 times. And so I know it's frustrating. We want more relief, but I also have to tell you that this makes a difference. And it has made a difference in some of the relief that we have seen. And it's made a difference. All of those geopolitical issues, all of those historic factors that we talked about, Eric, we had to fight through that in order to get a focus on this and to get what we got. And so, again, over 100 signatures, bipartisan, bicameral, raising relief on K2, K3, talking about penalty relief, talking about more suspension of notices.
Well, we're being heard, which is excellent.
So now here's something else we started talking about right away, right, Eric? When the town hall started and the money was flowing out through PPP and through the other programs, was that we knew when there is that level of public funding that is going out, there's also going to be a high level of oversight and scrutiny. And we talked about that, I think, from the very beginning of the town hall series, to just make sure people were aware of the scrutiny that was coming. The folks that participate in the town halls do it right. So I don't want anybody to lose sleep over this, but it is something that we monitor very closely. Department of Justice has uncovered what they're saying is close to $8 billion in fraud from multiple programs on recovery. And you heard it in the State of the Union, where President Biden actually announced that they were going to have a director that was specifically focused on COVID-19 fraud enforcement. And so that is somebody that gets up every day in a department at the Department of Justice that is looking at fraud from the criminal side. We're also seeing, hearings going on at small business and other committees that are, again, going through the oversight. So we talked about this at the very beginning. We knew it was coming. We knew the scrutiny would be there. We're not worried about this community, but we also just want to make sure that everybody is aware that this is going on. And it's not just going to be at the federal level. There was a lot of support that went out at the state level, too, that also is going to get some level of oversight.
Yeah, and Mark, we talked about this from day one, that there'd be third-party reviews. I mean, $1 trillion of close to $1 trillion was handed out in the business relief. Then you had, the other programs, the unemployment, programs, which handed out, hundreds of billions of dollars. So lots of money was distributed, and it actually kept the economy going. Mm-hmm. With that, there's always fraudsters out there. I mean, just if you look at the number, you and I had an exchange on something else today, and we just, what is the IRS, annual fraud number? It's like over $10 billion. So
easily.
There's always, that's why, the profession exists, is to put trust in the system. So there is fraud out there. And one thing, when you look at the relief programs, when they leverage the firms and they leverage the other stakeholders that we talked about, even the lenders, I think the incidences of fraud are much lower. And we're gonna talk about that sometime during one of these future town halls, where we'll look at this. We'll look at the role that the firms played, some of the lenders played, in really helping execute these governmental programs to minimize fraud. But yeah, there's going to be more hearings and more discussion on this. And at the same time, there should also be discussions on, what this did to keep the businesses intact, the economy going, and the role the firms played as a trusted advisor.
100%. We've got to mention this for awareness, but the story is that it was an incredibly successful public-private partnership that did a lot to save our economy.
Right. Something we got to leverage in the future potentially.
So we talked about geopolitical at the beginning, and I do have to mention some of the things that we're watching, and I think that we're going to be bringing back to the town hall community and to the AICPA membership. In reaction to Russia's invasion of the Ukraine, there has obviously been a massive reaction by the U.S. government. The administration has done things through executive order in order to choke off money to the oligarchs, in order to, hinder the ability of Russia to get financing, shutting down financial institutions doing business in Russia. And there's actually bills that could impact us. There are some bills that would impact us if they move forward. A dozen bills just came out of the House Financial Services Committee that are focused on Russia. Okay. The ability to find capital, the ability to be on our markets, those types of things. But one was specifically focused on, it was called the prohibiting the seal of approval for Russia and Belarus, where it statutorily prohibited firms that are PCAOB registered from doing business in Russia or Belarus, as well as the rating agencies. But I got to tell you, even if you're not, the PCAOB registered was just the hook. So it was well beyond the audit into tax, consulting, work that may be done through firm networks. I also will tell you that one of the other bills is very focused on, it's under money laundering, but it's really trying to track through tax filings, the web of investments that are coming out of Russia. And that could very easily capture members when you think about real estate transactions and things like that, and clients. If you're getting parts out of Russia, if you're getting parts out of somewhere other than Russia, but they're made in Russia, you could be liable to some of this. And so I'm not doing justice to the complexity here at all, Eric. We're digging in deep. We're putting together a team, and we're going to be coming back with more.
Well, Mark, just maybe two additional comments that you can follow up on. One is it's the supply chain too. A lot of supply chain pressures there that firms need to be aware of. So not just these kind of financial bills that are being put in place to stop the flow of dollars or even goods into Russia, but just in the Ukraine, Poland area, there's been impacts to some outsourcing activities that go on there, and then when you look at this, Mark, you commented a little bit about this at the beginning, what's going on here with Russia in Ukraine and what the impact it has on the overall legislative environment.
Well, it takes up all the air, right? So, I mean, there was a hearing with Commissioner Rettig today, but it's tough to get people's attention when just 48 hours ago they were talking to the president of the Ukraine, and so it really is a distraction. It takes up airtime. It's a good distraction because it's where our policymakers should be focused, and obviously it has massive impact on the world, not just the United States. But it creates a lot of challenges for us in order to get our message through. We're still doing it. We do it through their grassroots, and we do it because we have a great bipartisan reputation. To your point on the supply chain, I listed financial services bills, Eric. Each committee is going to go through and have a series of bills focused on Russia. The Commerce Committee has jurisdiction over oil and gas. The Ag Committee, obviously the agricultural community. They're all going to do something that's focused on Russia and on targeting Russia and trying to penalize them, a lot of which will be retracting business. So not all those bills are going to become law, but we're going to have a lot of work to do, and there's going to be a lot of questions coming in from the membership.
Well, Mark, thanks for distilling all of this. I think these are some great slides that the firms and attendees can leverage with their clients or with their companies. So thanks, Mark. Thanks for your team's leadership, and we'll be bringing you back for open forum. And there are a bunch of questions coming in that we're going to get to you then on. So thanks, Mark. With that, I'd like to welcome Carrie Hipsack, who you all know well. Welcome, Carrie. Carrie's, one of the leaders in the PCPS firm area with Lisa. So welcome, Carrie.
Great. Thank you, Eric. I'm excited to be tackling the technical updates. Thankfully, there's nothing too extravagant here. We'll kick off these updates with some news regarding IRS service. The first bullet and link on the slide is to a Journal of Accountancy article highlighting the IRS's plans for an expedited hiring process to bring on approximately 10,000 staff for processing tax returns and managing taxpayers' accounts. I'm sure many of us are aware about National Taxpayer Advocate Erin Collins' testimony to the Senate Finance Committee on February 17th, where she indicated that the IRS backlog included 17.6 million tax returns and nearly 6 million items of taxpayer correspondence. The IRS previously announced a surge team where they brought in approximately 1,200 employees to their specific account management function to work through the backlog. However, if hired within a short amount of time, these 10,000 employees would be an even greater asset to working through the backlog. The second bullet and link on this slide is to the IRS newsroom and a continued effort to bolster the IRS experience. The Taxpayer Experience Office was formally established. This Experience Office is part of the effort that was included in the Taxpayer First Act report to Congress last year. This focuses on all aspects of taxpayer transactions with the IRS across the service, compliance, and other program areas. This Taxpayer Experience Office will work with all IRS business units and coordinate with the Taxpayer Advocate Service. As we look forward to improvements in IRS service levels, let's move on to another prominent tax area. That's right, we're taking a look at state and local tax. SALT questions have been cropping up more and more frequently. As such, I'd like to highlight the SALT roadmap available at the link provided at the bottom of this slide. Once you open this link, the SALT roadmap will bring you to an interactive US map, which you can see on the right of this slide. Clicking on the state, California, in the case of this example, will open up direct links to valuable information specific to that state, divided into personal income tax, corporate income tax, franchise tax, and state tax form. Also on that screen are direct links to the state's government websites, as well as the state society. Finally, for the last component of this technical update, we're taking a look at COVID EIDL. I've bolded COVID EIDL because, as a reminder, EIDL existed as a disaster recovery program before COVID. A separate EIDL program was established for COVID loans, and those specific COVID EIDL loans approved in calendar year 2020, 2021, or 2022 are the focus of this update. The total deferment for principal and interest of COVID EIDL loans has been extended to 30 months from the date of the note. This is an extension of the 24-month deferment that was announced around the same time last year. Interest will continue to accrue during the deferment period, and partial or full payments can be made at the borrower's discretion. The SBA recommends using pay.gov to make those payments, again, if the borrower chooses. Deferments may result in balloon payments, and if any auto payments are already established, they will need to be manually stopped by the borrower by contacting their SBA servicing center. So that's just a couple of quick updates that I had to share. And Eric,
Carrie,
back.
Carrie, thank you. And one thing, just talking about the SBA and these different programs, we have been receiving some questions, just for us to give an update on SBA lending and other financing opportunities for the firm. So that's something that we will be covering. I mean, there's been a lot of focus on the PPP forgiveness and managing loans from 2020 and 2021. But I think we also will start talking about just 2022 and financing needs for firms and their companies. Carrie, thank you for today's update, and look forward to having you back for the open forum section.
Great, thank you, Eric.
So with that, let me bring up Carl Peterson, who you all know leads the small firm services area at the AICPA, and Deb Rood, who you will introduce. So Carl, the group always loves to hear your advice, and I know you've got some great tidbits for the final 30 days here of tax season.
Absolutely. Thanks, Eric. I'm happy to introduce Deb Rood to the town hall to talk about risk management as we come into the last few weeks of this tax season. Deb is a CPA and a risk control consulting director for CNA, and CNA is the underwriter of the AICPA Professional Liability Insurance Program. Deb advises firms on risk management, but perhaps most important is her 16 years of experience in a CPA firm, bringing practical experience to the conversation. Deb, welcome to the town hall.
Thanks, Carl. I'm excited to be here, and hopefully I can bring some good tips for the town hall participants to help them make it through these last 30 days.
I'm sure we will have a great conversation here. So, now that the business return due date has passed and firm focus is on, individual tax returns, what are some of the things that CPAs should really be doing right now?
Well, you covered a lot of them 2 weeks ago in the town hall. You were really on point, but I think we can follow up on a couple of things. And the most important thing is probably, if you haven't heard from somebody by now, get in touch with them. Send them a communication now and tell them they have to have their information in by a date certain. In that if they don't do it, you're not going to be able to get their return done. And if they don't do it, if they don't get anything to you, there might be penalties and interest for failing to timely file or timely pay that apply. So hopefully your clients have provided you information. When you get it, review it as soon as you can, because the sooner you can review it, the sooner you can get back to them with the questions you have or open items based on what you've received. You don't want to be doing that at the last minute. When you follow up with them, tell them the consequences of not failing to get you that information on a timely basis. And then, if it's a conversation, follow it up with an email. And if it's an email, put that email in your file, because you want that documentation of that you really talked to the client and they knew what they were supposed to get, just in case they don't get it to you.
Yeah, I think that's great information during this time crunch, the last 4 weeks or so we have left. So, firms tell me that they're behind in getting returns out the door this year. There's going to be a lot more extended returns than in prior years. So let's talk about extensions. What if the CPA prepared returns for a particular client in prior years, but hasn't been able to reach them yet for this year, and they've not heard a word for them? What's the harm in filing an extension for them?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. I'm sure you do too. I'm sure we've both been on the fence about whether we should file an extension for a client or not. Well, at CNA, we would tell you don't do it. I know a lot of people say it's best for client relationships, that they expect you to do it, but let me tell you a couple reasons why I think it's a bad idea. First, are they really a client anymore? You sent them an organizer in January. You followed up with them. If you haven't followed up with them yet, you're going to follow up with them this week, hopefully, or at least over the weekend. You're calling them, you're sending them emails. If they haven't contacted you, are they really a client anymore? And if they're not a client and you file an extension for them, do you have an Internal Revenue Code Section 7216 penalty that could apply? I don't know the answer to this. I think it's possible. 7216 says you can only use that tax information that you get for 2020 to prepare the 2020 tax return. And if you use it for a different purpose, like filing a 2021 extension, you arguably could be subject to the penalties under 7216, which are both financial and criminal. So I think you want to keep that in mind. And actually, I spoke with a CPA earlier this week who went to file an extension for a partnership return. And actually, it was a partnership return. It was a new client, and the prior CPA had extended the return already in February, extended all of their clients. Well, not all of their clients, because this guy, everyone they prepared a return for last year. So now we've got an upset client, upset with his prior CPA, and we've got some implications because this tax return has some elections, and now this extension is proving troublesome. So first of all, do you have the clients, are they really a client? Do you have a 7216 violation? Second reason, statute of limitations. You've extended the statute of limitations, and admittedly for most clients it doesn't matter, but there are a handful of clients where extending that statute of limitations could be problematic and could upset them. Finally, your extension could interfere with a taxpayer's reasonable cause defense for penalty abatements. Let me tell you a story that I'm familiar with. CPA extended the client's return without the client's permission. Years later, the client's attorney tries to get the penalties abated. Penalty abatement is denied. Why? Because of that extension that the CPA filed without the client's permission. Now, who do you think that client is going to blame for the penalty abatement not being relieved? It's going to be the CPA.
Yeah. When I listen to this and think here you talk about 7216 penalties and criminal possibility charges in that, it makes me think about, we should have a section here on being scared straight, right? So let's move on. It seems like the last few weeks of the season is when CPAs hear about things that clients have done over the past year and maybe didn't tell their CPA, and maybe that puts that CPA in an awkward position I know it happened to us when I was in practice. So like, they're going through a divorce and all of a sudden you find that out. What should you do?
And it just seems like a hot topic for at least that I'm hearing. I don't know about you, Carl. I had 3 calls last week on the same day about clients who are divorcing. You recognize that this is a potential conflict of interest, and hopefully it goes through amicably and there's not a problem, but that doesn't always happen. And sometimes the CPA gets in the middle of it. And that's not what you want to do ever, let alone this time of year. So if you have that situation, the next slide has some resources on it. And one of those resources is an article written by our defense counsel. We asked defense counsel to write, and it provides a whole bunch of really great advice and answers almost every question you have when your clients announce that they're going to get divorced. So we don't have to go through the details now, but if you have a client that's divorcing, refer to that article.
It's really a difficult situation to be in because we always, develop such close relationships with both, the taxpayers as clients. There are times when you're preparing the current return or the extension at this time of year, of course, and you find that the firm made a mistake in the prior year, or if it's a new client, maybe the prior firm made a mistake. What should a firm do when they discover that error?
Yeah, we've all been there where you look at a return and you say, who made that stupid mistake? And you look at it and it was you, and you're like, how'd I miss that? And you look at what time you signed off on it. It's April 12th at 11 p.m. So we all make mistakes. None of us are happy about it. But I mean, the most important thing to do is follow the professional standards. Circular 230 and SSTS, Statements on Standards for Tax Services, are on there. And those standards require you to inform the client promptly of the error. Tell the client the potential consequences of the error and recommend corrective actions. After that, it's the client's decision on what to do about it. But if they don't follow your recommendation, like amending returns, even if you have to pay more, what does that say about your client's integrity? Now, once you get there, there's a lot of different scenarios when there's an error and on a prior return, and it's, a lot of different things to do. So use your team, and your team should include your professional liability insurance carrier. We're here to help. It's not like auto insurance where 3 strikes and you're out. We want to help you as much. We want to get you out of those penalties, out of problems with your clients as much as you do. And so use us as a resource, as a back office, somebody to bounce ideas out of, somebody to help you. We've been through this, I'm hoping, a lot more than all of you have. And so we've got that experience to give you some ideas on how to walk through it. And I mean, I know we do, and most insurers do.
Yeah. Well, we provide a lot of information in these town halls about what's going on at the IRS and the status of various guidance related to new legislation. There's still so many unresolved items that CPAs and their clients are grappling with. What should CPAs do when there is an unresolved issue or guidance that is unclear?
Guidance unclear, like K2, K3? Can't imagine that.
Right.
That's a great question, Carl. And what I find is we as CPAs are helpers. We want to just help. And sometimes, especially when you're stressed out, you're working too much, deadlines are approaching, we feel compelled to make decisions on behalf of the client. And that's rarely the best thing to do. Because who do you think the client is going to blame if things go wrong? It's going to be us. And so what you need to do is you need to involve your client in the decision. Remember, it's their tax return. Our job is to give the lay of the land and let the client make the decision. So what do? You give the client the options that are available to them, the benefits of the risks of each option, and then have the client make the decision on how to proceed. It's the client's tax return. Now, likely the client is going to ask you, what do you think I should do? We're trusted advisors. They trust us to help them. You can give your recommendation, but they need to own that decision. And then after you've done that, document it. Send the client an email saying, hey, we talked about how you wanted to treat this. Here's how we're going to treat. Here's how you decided to treat it.
Yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting. I think I know your answer to this next question I have as we come to the end of this session. But and thankfully this doesn't really happen very often, but it does happen, especially there's a lot of pressure happening these last few weeks. But what if the firm is uncomfortable with the information that provided by a client? A lot of times the information is terrible, for one, and you have to go up and clean it up, and you're under pressure to get that done. Or you get pressure from the client to take a position that the CPA really isn't totally comfortable with, doesn't want to take it, can see it, but it doesn't feel right. Filing deadline's almost here. What does the firm do?
So yeah, I mean, we never want you to sign a tax return you're not comfortable with, and the professional standards don't allow you to. You've got to believe in what you're signing. I hate to say it, but if you're in that position, it may be best to end the client relationship without preparing the return. Now, we still have a few weeks left. So I think, this goes back to give the client options. Here's option number one. You go find somebody else who will clean up your records, believe you when you say you have basis in something when you don't, who just somebody not as knowledgeable as you. Find somebody else. Number two, if you are comfortable, you can file an extension for them. Option number three is what you mentioned 2 weeks ago, Carl. Give them the extension and say, here, file your own extension. So once the extension is done, we want you to send the client a termination letter. And the next slide has a link to how to write a client termination letter. And, once again, your professional liability carrier is a great resource here. As the deadline gets closer, the risks of firing a client are greater. So we can help you walk through these options. And we can be a sounding board, because sometimes, especially the smaller practitioners that don't have as many people to bounce ideas back off of, your professional liability carrier can help you make the determination if you're overreacting or if you're right and things smell stinky.
Yeah. One of the things we haven't talked about today is, but I think it's throughout all of this. You think about where we have the last 4 weeks left. All of this really relates to managing client expectations. And when we're under pressure, there's no better time to make sure you're managing those expectations. Take the pressure off of you, takes the pressure off the client. It actually probably makes that relationship even better. We used to tell clients during this time of the year, if you want us to do the best job we can do, let's extend your return, because we'll have a better mind and body after April 15th to come back and take a look at it. So real quickly, any final words of wisdom?
Documentation. I know it takes time, but it's so important. Document the deadlines you give to clients, the questions you ask and their response, their decisions. And if you have to end a relationship, document that in a termination letter. It's really, really hard to defend a claim when there's no documentation. And remember, your professional liability carrier is there to help you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Dan.
Hey, Carl, a couple of questions for you guys. First off, the town hall attendees loved this segment, finding it very valuable in the heat of tax season. So, Deb, two things. One is just repeat again the article highlight that we have highlighted here related to managing the divorce situation. And then a second question, can you fire a client after you file an extension for them? So just make that really clear. You and Carl talked about it, but some confusion on that.
Yep. So the article on divorce is considerations in avoiding becoming a casualty in the divorce wars. And that was written by one of our defense panel counsel. And it answers almost every question. And on the extend a client and then fire them, absolutely, you can do that. And the timing of that is something you might want to talk to your professional liability carrier about that, because sometimes you want to do it just immediately. Sometimes you want to, take a deep breath and think about it and say yes. Sometimes you want to cool off a little bit and have the client cool off. So sometimes talking to your carrier, your carrier is your partner here.
Yeah, Eric, if I can be passionate about that last question, I'll tell you what, we absolutely would fire a client even if we did an extension. If we had some, for whatever reason, there's anxiety, but like I would wait. We would wait a week and then we'd look at those. Okay, are we really going to do this return or are they out of here? And so great question.
Well, hey, thanks, Carl. Thanks, Deb. Look forward to having you back at Open Forum and continuing the discussion. So with that, I'd like to bring up my friend and one of the profession's leaders, Jim Bork. So welcome, Jim. Great to have you on the town hall. You've been on the town hall before. For those of you, I think most of you know Jim. Jim's has been chair of Engage, the largest AICPA conference, Prac Tech, council, board member, and just one of the technology leaders for the profession. So welcome, Jim.
Thanks, Eric. I'm so happy to be here with you guys and here remotely again, in this crazy world.
Well, Jim, there's already questions coming in on your topic today, so we're gonna get right into it. But one thing I'll just, as you kind of kick this off for us, is there's so much inventory of firms and products and services. So there you go. So as you kind of help with the landscape in this increasing cyber threat, there's a question for you.
Yeah, I mean, so Eric, you're absolutely right. I mean, think about this. As a sole practitioner, your head has to be spinning right now with all of these things that are out there, being from malware to ransom attacks to threats of cyber attacks. It's crazy. So what we're going to try to do is try to narrow it down to a couple of the top things you need to be concerned about. And what I'm going to talk about, Eric, with you is, it doesn't matter if you're a small firm on Main Street or if you're a big national firm. We have exactly the same security concerns to be aware of.
Well, thanks. So let's just talk about Ukraine and the Russian cyber attacks and how should we be thinking about this? And is this just another opportunity for us to review our overall security framework?
That's exactly what it is, Eric. That's how I view this, right? I mean, this is keeping the news, is keeping probably a lot of us up at night, concerns. How does that impact our business, our economy? And to me, from a technology perspective, I'm looking to see how does this impact us from a cybersecurity perspective. We're looking at our firms, we're looking at our clients, and so we need to be knowledgeable about, okay, maybe you won't be directly impacted, but you know what? We can exercise some best practice in this space. That next slide that you just shut up there's a great website that's available from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. They have what's called a Shields Up website. Now, CISA is basically the quarterback for the federal security team, right? They partner with the Office of Management and Budget, responsible for all federal security. So this is, look, if I'm a CPA practicing today, if I'm in private, if I'm in public, if I'm in education, I want to go to this website because it's going to give me up-to-date information about what's happening, and quite frankly, all the information that we're getting about what's happening in the Ukraine right now. Some of that is coming out as it relates to cybersecurity. That is posted real time on this site. So it's a good go-to site to educate the CPA about what's happening. And you know what? As we in our profession migrate more towards being that trusted advisor, going towards advisory services, having this knowledge and sharing this knowledge with your clients is priceless stuff.
So Jim, you use this, how often do you go to this site? If you're a small firm, how often you just check in?
Look, I would check in on a daily basis. If you're like me, you're going to obsess over it. I have it literally, I'm looking at it right here on my other screen. So I got 4 screens going on. I have that screen up because it is so important. It changes real time with information that's popped up that's relevant. Look, all I want to do, Eric, is I want to make sure that I'm just one step ahead of the bad guys. If I know that they're looking, they're for example, a threat, a release came up the other day. It talked about Russian state-sponsored cyber actors gain network access by exploiting default multi-factor authentication protocols. Look, I know that that's really confusing, but it's the type of protocols that we utilize when we verify third-party access to websites. That's important for us to know and important for us to share with our clients.
Well, Jim, I know you've got a list here of best practices and tips. And I think that's what this group wants.
Right. So look, Eric, I could do an 8-hour seminar on just this stuff alone, right? But so I'm going to try to focus on, let's say, the top 8. What should we be doing right now in light of what's happening with Ukraine, in light of what's happening? Look, we're all heads down in audit season. We're buried in tax season. We're probably distracted. So focus on this type of stuff. Validate remote access. Multi-factor authentication is an absolute must. We've been talking about moving our profession to the cloud for the longest time. Many of us, we've made that progression. We're out there. If you're accessing any cloud-based applications today, use multi-factor authentication. Plain and simple, it's using another device, using a mobile device, using your eyes, using your fingers, using something that only you would know or only you have to allow access to certain information. Second, this may seem really basic, but ensure all software is up to date, including antivirus and anti-malware. This is so important because as we update antivirus software, anti-malware software applications, known breaches, known threats are generally covered. That's very, very, very important. Think about this. Next item, disable all ports that are non-essential. Think about this. It's like leaving your back door unlocked, right? You lock your front door, but you leave your back door unlocked. What could happen? Someone could come in and take something. Same thing happens in the world of technology. When you leave ports open, you leave vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities exist. Someone could come in and grab something. And heard me talk about cloud services. I got to give a plug for the AI CPA and literally a plug for our profession. We took ownership of the SOC space, SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3, SOC for cyber. Let me tell you, I would not deal with a cloud vendor today that holds confidential and private information that has not gone through a SOC 2 examination. I would challenge that cloud vendor, do you have a SOC 2 engagement today? So much is available there. You can all get great education about what SOC 2 is, what SOC for cyber is at aicpa.org. We'll share that link with you in a few minutes. Go ahead, Eric.
Hey, yeah, Jim. Lot of great information. A couple of questions coming in. Just first off, on the SOC 1, SOC 2 reports, I received a data point the other day that there potentially could be up to 3 million. SOC 2 reports being conducted, and it's a must. It's a must for any company that's providing cloud services. And not all SOC 2 reports are the same, so it's always good to take a look at those.
Oh, correct. And you know what, Eric? We own this space, right? A SOC engagement can only be done by a CPA, only be signed off on by a CPA, subject to peer review, right? So this is a space that we own. We understand this space. Again, I would share this knowledge with your clients. Your clients are doing like us. I mean, they're all migrating to the cloud today. Make sure best practices that their cloud providers are covered under a SOC 2 engagement. I mean, that is so important today.
All right, so Jim, and you and I talked about this before today's show, and you said these lists of items here a small firm could do quickly, and there's a couple of questions here. One is on, I'm going to give you two. One is on how do you identify and disable non-essential ports? And secondly, is it dangerous to leave your computers on for 24/7 for remote access? Is that okay just to leave so those two questions for you.
Okay. All right. So disabling ports, it's not rocket science. If you have an internal IT team, they could very easily disable ports. Disabling ports on laptops, peripheral devices, that's one thing. More importantly, those servers in the back office that you may not understand, that you may not realize have those open ports, they could be disabled through the administrative functions of the OS of whatever operating system that you are actually using. Is it okay to leave computers on all the time? I say yes, as long as you are protected, right? There are technologies out there that basically block threats. As long as you're up to date, things like that, I don't have an issue with leaving them on. Now, that's not to say that you should leave them on for an indefinite period of time. Should you reboot them? Should you clear them out? Absolutely, yes, but no downside in leaving them on.
It's always good to reboot. I reboot before every town hall. So
that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Talk about quick on this last couple things. Backups. Look, we all do backups. All right. Make sure you have had an opportunity to restore those backups. The last thing you want is a ransom attack, and you can't go back to those backups because somebody figured out we've never tested our backups. Just test your backups. And bottom line is, just if you are attacked, don't cover it up. If your employees get attacked or one of your employees gives away credentials, just, what we do in my own firm, just make sure everyone is willing to volunteer that information right away. The quicker you're able to detect and respond to these acts, the better you will all be, and the higher the likelihood of recovery in a very short amount of time.
Well, Jim, just to close out here, anything dealing with the Ukrainian organizations, and just any thoughts on kind of what's going on in the Europe environment?
Yeah. So here's what I would leave you with, which is sort of what I started with. Look, we're all buried in tax season. We're all buried getting our audits, our reviews, our compilations out right now. The bottom line is we're tired. We're exhausted. We may not focus sometimes on those email requests. Watch out for phishing attacks, because as the whole world goes to the cloud, that's the area of highest exposure. When we're weakest, when we're tired, we generally click through. So all I would say is when you're presented with an email that requests information or login credentials, take a pause before clicking all the way through. So the best advice I can give, regardless of the current climate.
Well, great advice, Jim. You're going to stay with us. So thanks for these best practices. And I think it's critical, as you just said, to be doing this during tax season when there's all these phishing exercises and people can be tired. So with that, let's bring Carrie, Carl, Mark, and Deb back up, and we can drop the slides. So wow. That was that 50 minutes just flew by. So we've got a lot of questions here. Mark, I'm going to start off with you, Mark Peterson.
Sure.
A couple of questions coming in on will the tax deadline be extended?
Yeah, I should have started with that when we started talking at the beginning of this, Eric. As I think we've mentioned this in the past, this totally splits the membership, whether we should stick with this year, April 18th, or move it. And then not only does it split whether you stay with the date or move it, then it splits on to move it to what. So at this time, the answer is no. We've seen no indication or interest of the IRS moving it. We're not advocating for it to be moved. We have been watching closely the IRS's capacity. We've been watching closely. I mean, when it happened the last couple of times, they shut down Kansas City. They shut down some of their operations. So right now, the answer to that one is no. Okay.
All right, Jim. I mean, this is a live show, so I'm just going to ask you the question. I'm not sure if you have the answer, but that's fine. So there's an antivirus software, a Russian antivirus software, Kaspersky. So what should they do if they've been leveraging that software?
Okay, so here's the deal. The technology, I'm very aware of the technology. It's been around for a long time. It's worked very well. I mean, you just need to exercise through professional care. In light of everything that you see going on in the world today, I can't tell you to continue using it. I can't tell you to stop using it. All I can tell you is that it's basically been proven. A lot of entities, a lot of companies that I'm very familiar with utilize that technology today. So I think, I can't say not to use it because I know so many are using it today. But, just be extremely careful. It's along the same lines of doing business with technology companies in the Ukraine that are under constant pressure. Just be very careful. Just exercise due care. Monitor the activity, inspect it, isolate it if there are issues. But again, just be careful.
Okay. Thanks. And the question that came in before at the start was just, how do you, finding that right security consultant, that right advisor, as you said, if you that question about ports, you go to the person managing your server, if on the antivirus software, same thing, find the right expert or maybe some type of session related to it. Is there anything else you want to talk about related to antivirus or malware more broadly?
Well, but here's what I'll say is that, technology today is no longer a differentiator based upon firm size. Every single firm, and I want to stress this, from the sole practitioner up to the national firms, could take advantage of the same security software, same security applications. If I'm a sole practitioner, I may not have a CIO, an IT director. I'm more likely than not going to use a managed service provider. Just make sure in our profession that you use one that understands what we do.
Right, and ask questions. Ask these questions. So,
Right.
on our town hall newsletter that's coming out next week, we're going to take some of these questions that are coming in related to malware, virus, and some recommendations. We'll talk to Jim and see if we can put something together for the community. So, Carl, when you listen to this, I'm going to ask you. You listen to Jim's presentation today in cybersecurity. How do you look at this from the small firm perspective right now during tax season?
Yeah, I worry about the small firms that haven't made some of the choices that Jim talks about and to protect themselves. There are a number of firms, that went through the pandemic and started going remote, and everybody could do it because the technology was there. But I'm not sure that all the enough small firm practitioners have looked back and said, wait a minute, now that we've done it, we know we can do it. Do we have the right security protocols in place? That scares me a little bit, worries me. And I think I know there are firms, people I know who've shared with me that they know they're at risk.
All right. So now that I'm going to go right to you, Deb, on just from the professional liability carrier perspective, what advice do you have for the firms?
I think Jim and Carl are right. You have the systems in place, and then I know I'm the insurance company, but I'm not in sales, but I'm going to say you have to have a cyber policy, because it's not a matter of if you're going to have a breach or something happen, it's when. I was talking with a firm this morning that mailed tax returns and they went to the wrong place. A good cyber policy will cover that. And I think we've all, email, paper mail, or electronic, or you have something bad happen, get a cyber policy to protect you in case your other systems don't.
Okay, that could be a future session here on the town hall. So thanks for that. Hey, Carrie, I'm going to come to you. First off, a lot of kudos on the SALT map. There's a lot of differences by state. So thank you for that. In the PCPS team, do you anticipate, and Mark could jump in here as well, do you anticipate any guidance on K2, K3 coming out anytime soon?
Carrie,
We're always hopeful.
You're always hopeful.
I think we have to be hopeful, but we're also got to be realistic. I don't want to give false expectations. I can't give false expectations. That does not mean we're not hammering them. They did today. We want delay and penalty relief. And with so many people having done extensions, both of those could help. But I am not confident, and I don't want to give anybody false hope.
So the last one, Mark, is we talked a lot about small firms here today, but the question from a large mid-sized firm just being targeted from both a tax and regulatory perspective. Just quick closing comments here as we wrap up.
Number one, the vast majority of firms, the vast majority of work is all really good. Okay. So, but every once in a while there's a problem. The bigger you are, the bigger the problem, the more press coverage it gets. Okay. That's just the reality. We all have some stories around that. I think the big thing there, and we're very, very focused on this, is we have got to tell our narrative about isolate an issue. If there's an issue, a firm is going to deal with it. We're the regulator. We have got to tell the profession story. We contributed to the recovery through PPP. Right. We do a lot of good work related to tax for large clients and small clients. We on the private side and on the public side, we do a lot related to audits and the protection of investors. So we have to tell that story. There's always going to be something out there that is of an isolated incident, but we can't let that be the narrative. The narrative is we do a lot of good work and we contribute to the economy and we protect people.
Well said, Mark. So great close there. Hey, thanks, Jim, Mark, Carrie, Carl, and Deb for a great session. We're going to just have some closing slides here, but thanks for today's town hall. It's been very well received. So here's the summary slide. It's great, the trusted advisor role. A lot of good information here today for you to leverage with your clients. Let you read these other takeaways from the sessions that we covered today. Here's the most recent AICPA Town Hall series links. Take advantage of these archives. You can also view them via podcast. Last town hall, we talked about, how you manage taxable crypto transactions. We've got a free webcast coming up next week, March 23rd, where we'll be talking about a solution and ways to manage that. So something you may want to take advantage of. We appreciate the good discussion on social media related to the town hall and some of the resources we're discussing or some information that we're bringing to the community, because we want to get the word out to Tax Twitter and to everybody. Here again, you can sign up for the town hall newsletter. For some reason, if you've opted out, this is the way to opt in, and we issue that at the early stages of the following week from the town hall. Here is the upcoming town hall sessions. On March 31st, we're going to have Barry Melanson joining us. We also are going to have some other special guests that help take a broader look at what's going on in the overall environment that we're living in today. And we will also bring you the latest tax and technical updates. So thanks for being with us today. We greatly value this time with you. Hope you have a good end to tax season, but we will be with you once again on March 31st. That's all for now. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for your participation. You can now subscribe to the AICPA Town Hall series on your favorite podcast platform, as well as watch archives on YouTube and AICPA TV. Tune in for live broadcasts Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time.